I have upgraded this village. I have built houses, farms, and even an iron farm, which is not working. But somehow it still feels empty. So today I'm going to build something massive that can be seen from almost anywhere in the village. Something that will finally make this place feel alive. And you guessed it right from the thumbnail. I'm going to build a massive crane. So let's go. I decided that this would be the perfect spot to build my crane. So to get things started, I marked out a 17 by 17 foundation using deep slate cobblestone. Then I built up the walls of the base using stone and stone bricks, bringing the structure about 5 blocks above the outline. Once that was done, I filled the top two layers with dirt and built a 9 by 9 platform out of stone and stone bricks once again. This would be the area where the crane legs would eventually stand. Next, I built 4 stone supports that would hold up the entire crane. For the main tower, I decided to use polished deep slate because from a distance it looks surprisingly similar to a large steel beam. First, I placed pillars all the way around the structure. Then, I used polished deep slit stairs to create the diagonal support that gives the crane the iconic look. After that, all I had to do was repeat the same design on every side. Then I added a border around the top and mirrored the diagonal support in the opposite direction. While I was working on this, day turned into night. Then it started raining. Another day passed, then another night. Then somehow it started raining again, but I wasn't about to quit. I just kept building, block after block, piece after piece, until eventually I ran out of materials and had to make the long trip all the way back down because I'm using water to go up and down, so it's painfully slow. And if you have any other idea, you can drop it in the comments. Thank you. And after restocking my supplies and wasting way too much time wandering around, I finally got back to work. At the top, I built a small platform where I could safely stand and take a break. And I added railings so I wouldn't accidentally fall to my death because that just happens to me every time. Now it was time for the crane arm. For that, I decided to use mangrove planks because it's red. I extended the arm out towards the river and left the space on the opposite side for the counterweights. To give the arm its triangular shape, I added another support beam running through the center. Then I added horizontal support to make it look more detailed, and I used chains to represent some of the thinner structural cables. Next up were the counterweights. But before I got to those, I wanted to finish the crane tower. I completed the upper section which had a slightly tapered shape, And by the time I was done, this thing was partially touching the clouds. I also built a control room using white concrete and glass, but the problem was it looked absolutely terrible from a distance. So I tore the whole thing down, then I built smaller version instead, which I will probably end up tearing down later on. But finally it was time to build the counterweights. And for those I used smooth stone, andesite and cobblestone. While building them, I suddenly realized something. Why was I making the entire thing out of solid blocks? Like, I could have filled the inside with literally anything. Like, anything. And only used the nice blocks on the outside. What? But unfortunately, by the time I figured that out, it was way too late. So I committed to my mistake and finished the counterweights anyway. After that, I added railings around the structure and made the tower even taller. At this point, it was going straight through the clouds. Then comes the cable attached to the trolley. For that, I just use spruce fences and slabs. And after making a bunch of small adjustments and corrections, the crane was finally finished. But a crane alone wasn't enough. Like, if I was building a crane, I needed a dock, right? After all, ships needed somewhere to unload their cargo. So, for the dock, I decided to use oak slabs. And I started by outlining the entire shape and then slowly filled everything in with slabs. And trust me, that took a way longer than I expected. But somewhere in the middle of all that, I also rescued a cat that had fallen into the water. Although, to be completely honest, I'm the one who pushed it in there in the first place. So, technically, I was both the villain and the hero of the story. Anyway, after getting back to work and about 30 minutes later, the dock surface was finally complete. Then I used spruce logs to create support pillars that extended all the way down to the river surface. After that, I thought the dock looked a little too plain, so I decided let's add some texture using spruce slabs. And when I finally stepped back to look at it, I genuinely feel bad for myself. Like, just look at that. I don't know how someone can make something look that bad. Like, seriously, that is trash. I mean, it's kind of looking like.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
So, after destroying the disaster, I came up with a different design, and thankfully, this version looked better. Actually, a way better than that one. I also used campfires to create a few smaller decks connected to the main one that would perfectly work for fishing and parking the smaller boats. Now there was only one thing left to do, and that is add all the cargo and the decorations that you'd expect to see at a real dock. I used barrels, hay bales, pumpkins, watermelons, composters, and a bunch of other blocks to create stack of supplies. I even added a few chairs here and there so people could sit down and relax. And with that, the dock was finally complete. Now you may have noticed that the crane doesn't actually have a hook yet. And that's because in the next episode, I'm going to build a massive container ship. Once that's finished, I will hang a shipping container from the crane and finally put it to work. So if you're still watching all the way to the end, I want to say you something. Thanks. No, for real, like from the bottom of my stomach. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.